desperation. It smacks of the fact that Trump has been unable to resolve this. And I should note that Turkey's role is not new. I mean, Turkey
Mhm.
has played whether a formal or informal mediation role since the beginning of this war. So the fact that Trump is only now kind of discovering the role that Turkey might play, once again, I think speaks to the fact that he really is not an expert in this conflict. And incidentally, I think his key negotiator, Steve Witkoff, is also not an expert in this conflict. And I think this is really starting to show.
Mhm. And sticking with that idea, do you think Trump's move to bring Erdogan into the picture could work better than previous efforts?
Well, as I mentioned, Erdogan has already been in the picture. I mean, to say that Trump is bringing him into the picture implies that Turkey has not already been involved, when in reality, Turkey's been pretty involved now for a couple of years. So I'll be honest, I do not expect a different result now that Trump has officially and formally brought in Turkey versus, I guess, what was Turkey's informal, unofficial role over the last couple of years. And of course, I mean that somewhat sarcastically. Again, Turkey has been very, very involved, and I think Trump's recent actions are more symbolic than they are substantive.
Mhm. And on the China front, Xi is visiting Russia soon. And do you think this could be part of a push to end the war, maybe with China pressuring Putin?
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure that it's in China's interest for this war to end. The longer that this war goes on, the greater China's ability to pressure Taiwan while the attention of the free world is diverted to Eastern Europe. And I believe that the likelihood of a conflict in Taiwan is increasing dramatically. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I think that the likelihood of some kind of conflict in and around Taiwan over the course of the next 2 to 3 years is at roughly 50%. And the longer the war in Ukraine drags on, the higher the likelihood that such a conflict actually transpires. So do I think Xi Jinping is interested in pressuring Putin to end the war? No. I'm not, I'll be honest, I don't know why, he's in Russia. I'm not privy to the private conversations between the two dictators. But I would imagine it could very well have something to do with economic partnership. I could imagine it could have something to do with mutual military support or other such things. But in truth, you do see a partnership between China and Russia, in one in which Russia is the junior partner, China is the senior partner, and I don't see that partnership going anywhere. And I don't really see China playing a positive role in Russia's war against Ukraine.
You're right, but we know China has a big economic problem because of the trade war. And building on that, if Xi somehow gets Putin to back down, do you think the US could ease tariffs on China in return?
Well, number one, again, like I said, I don't think that it's in China's interest for Putin to back down. So I don't think that's what China's going to be doing.
But it's important
I hope I'm
for
wrong.
Trump.
Yes, it's important for Trump, but I don't think China's top priority is doing whatever's important for Trump. Um, we're talking about the trade war with China. Again, America is going to be hurt by this just as much as China. Note that while Trump has increased tariffs significantly on China, he has also issued so many exemptions that the most important goods that are traded between America and China, things like, the iPhone, things like auto parts, and other such things that are critical to American industry, Trump has offered an exemption for those goods. Which is to say that some of the tariffs that he has, levied against China are kind of in theory more than in practice, because again, there's so many of these exceptions. Do I think China is in a rush to offer Trump concessions in return for Trump's, lowering those tariffs? Again, I do think there are negotiations between the two countries. I do not think that China is going to, prioritize doing whatever Trump wants as one of its top things. Therefore, do I think it's a factor in China's conversations with Putin? Maybe, but I would put the likelihood of that as being fairly low. I just think that Xi Jinping has a number of other priorities with Russia that are more important than essentially trying to give Trump something in return for Trump bringing tariffs down.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about Trump's reaction to the ceasefire. Trump now calls Putin a 3-day ceasefire a big win. But earlier, the White House was clearly unhappy and said that not what they expect. Why such a shift in tone?
Maybe they received a phone call from somewhere. I don't know. I think Trump is someone who doesn't like to be perceived as losing, right? I mean, well, obviously nobody likes to be perceived as losing, but Trump especially, someone with his ego, with his self-regard, and with his posturing as this strong man, he cannot be perceived as having lost, as having failed. Therefore, he will take anything as evidence of a victory. This, incidentally, was one of my biggest fears when I first heard about Putin's so-called ceasefire. What I was afraid of was that Trump would point to this and say, look, we succeeded. There you go. That's it. We're good. We're done. We're out of here. And that's what I'm kind of afraid may happen, is that, Trump is going to look at one of these things and say, oh, look, Putin made some kind of concession. Terrific. Now, we can all go home and, that's it. We're done. And then the war, of course, will continue, but Trump will have washed his hands of it. To some extent, I'm afraid that that's perhaps what we are starting to see. Right. I mean, you've seen Trump talk about how he's going to pull out, how America is no longer interested in this conflict, how this is not his war, this is Joe Biden's war. He has made any number of statements indicating that he does not want to take responsibility for what happens, and that anything he can do to claim a victory is something that will allow him to save face while still essentially abandoning Ukraine. So again, let's see what happens over the course of the next week. But I would be deeply concerned if Trump truly believes that this so-called ceasefire was a strategic victory for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some suspect there is more going on behind the scene. Maybe Putin promised Trump something behind the scene. That's why Trump seems happy about the ceasefire. But why does he still trust Putin at all?
That is the million-dollar question. Why does President Trump trust Vladimir Putin? I don't know. Is it possible that Putin promised him something? It's possible. Again, we're not going to know. But the truth is that we have seen consistently for the last roughly decade plus that Trump has a certain sympathy for dictators, right? I mean, we've seen this where he went from calling Kim Jong-un his enemy. He called him Little Rocket Man. He said that, his nuclear button was bigger than Kim Jong-un's nuclear button, to suddenly calling Kim Jong-un one of his best friends and talking about how much they love each other and so forth. And with Putin, the only difference is that Trump never claimed to hate Putin. In fact, Trump has attacked almost every foreign leader in the world except Putin. I have almost never heard Trump say anything negative about Putin. The closest I think we've come was when, last week Trump said, "Stop Vladimir." Again, as though that were the epitome of American foreign policy. And I actually reacted on social media and said that that entire interaction reminded me of an episode from Veep, which is this American comedy show about an American vice president. And the whole point is it's supposed to skewer the American political system because there's all these ridiculous and insane situations. But again, seeing an American president's reaction to the Russian dictator killing countless Ukrainians, and his reaction is just to say, "Stop, Vladimir." I mean,